From the Cube studios in Palo Alto and Boston, bringing you data-driven insights from the Cube and ETR. This is Breaking Analysis with Dave Vellante.
Salesforce is moving from the hype phase of generative AI into the harder engineering of the agentic enterprise. Dreamforce 2025 showed that the company that once defined the original SaaS model now wants to lead what we call service as software. This is a revolution and something that's profound, something that George Gilbert has really driven into our breaking analysis segments. This is a world where AI agents, not applications, deliver outcomes across systems of record, systems of engagement, and systems of intelligence. And so in our view, Salesforce's Agentforce 360 platform is crossing the day one to the day two chasm. What does that mean? It's no longer just demoing co-pilots inside Customer 360. It's going after the messy day two problems of observability, orchestration, data quality that determine whether agentic systems can scale in the enterprise. This is where really the rubber meets the road. Features like Agentforce observability and agent analytics, something that we're going to show you today, signal the emergence of a new operations layer. George calls this Datadog for agents, where the lineage of every decision, every workflow, transition, and the reasoning steps are tracked for provenance, performance, and continuous learning, including from the reasoning traces of humans. Very important that humans are in the loop. Now at the same time, Salesforce is fortifying its data cloud as the foundation of trust and accuracy. And this new stack that George will highlight today evolves from isolated SaaS apps into a system of intelligence, something that we've talked about a lot on Breaking Analysis, where data, governance, and metadata are unified to support agentic execution. This is the day two discipline that investors and CIOs have been waiting for. Maybe less showmanship and more system architecture. So the strategic question that we're going to ask is whether Salesforce can convert this discipline into a durable advantage and crush the competition before the hyperscalers and other SaaS players and open source ecosystems commoditize that agentic platform, and how its openness will attract new partners. Marc Benioff is betting that the same integration playbook that won the SaaS era, unifying apps, data, and engagement around trust in the enterprise, can win again in this age of agents. And the outcome will define, in our view, not just Salesforce's future, but the competitive balance between the builders of AI and AI factories and the operators of agentic enterprises. In this breaking analysis, George Gilbert is going to take us through his analysis and our takeaways of Salesforce Dreamforce 2025. George, let's get into it. First slide here, you've got the gorilla. Why did you choose this picture?
So this was courtesy of Nano Banana, the new image generator in Gemini. It's because Salesforce has been the King Kong of applications for decades, but they weren't quite Gulliver, in that it tied down, but they were mature. There's been a lull where they've fleshed out the suite, but really the question now is, can they transition from an era where we just delivered traditional sort of automation tools by the cloud to an era where we can now deliver something entirely different, which is work in the form of software. Outcomes, business outcomes, and that's the next 20 years in software.
And you chose Palantir and Celonis because why?
Those are the only two vendors right now who have credible offerings that are mature enough to say we can deliver an agent-based service as software that delivers outcomes. It's not SaaS.
All right, and this is a little different format for when we do these breaking analyses when we're on the show floor. We'll sort of signal, maybe bring the slides up and back and forth, but bring the next slide up. How quickly will the giant reclaim its dominance? It led the SaaS revolution. So George, you've got the traditional stacks, on-prem, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and you show sort of how vendors manage the managed services, but then, so explain that, and then there's this new green area. This is the high value real estate that you see coming, is it not?
Yeah, just to distill this really quickly, the reason why we think this is such a profound transition is we've changed a lot of things in the last 50 or 60 years. We've changed user interfaces, we've changed operating models, we've changed architectures, but fundamentally we've just built more silos. Silos of work automation and silos even of data. Because even if you have one giant data lake, you still have a lot of data silos in it. What's fundamentally new now is we got to put a layer above that to abstract that so you can do work end to end. And that's what we'll explain.
So George put forth the premise a couple of breaking analysis ago that when we went from on-prem software to SaaS, everything changed. The technical model, the operational model, and the business model, like things like pricing. And he's posited that that's going to happen again when we move from SaaS to service as software. So Christian, if you bring up that next slide, and this has profound impacts, not only on the technical, operational, and business model, but also on the notion, George, that software-like economics now confer value to not just tech companies, but and not just IT, but to all companies, and that leads to winner take most dynamics, is what your premise is.
Yeah, and this is, you identified the fact that when we went from on-prem to SaaS, that the technology, the operations, and the business model changed for the vendors. What's changing now is that when you deliver services software, whether it's legal outcomes, whether it's call centers, whether it's wholesale banking services, that's where the technology model, operations model, business model is going to change. This is one slide to linger on because here we go from application-centric silos to a data-centric platform, and we go from these isolated tools to an integrated system of intelligence, agency, and engagement. The operational model, this is where work goes from craft sort of silos to an assembly line for knowledge work. But the business model is where it's most interesting. Just really quickly, you used to have cost plus. Your cost scaled with with your capacity, which was human based. But now, this is an extractive business model where you learn the expertise of your human employees and you deploy it digitally. And as you deploy it with greater volume, you go down an experience curve. So it has two characteristics. Your marginal cost decline as more of your expertise is digital, and your differentiation increases as it gets deployed and learns from its experience. So that's how you get the winner take most dynamic. You get lowest cost and highest differentiation.
So the profound change here is now we're talking about scaling without having to grow labor costs, right. And that is very profound. So bring up the next slide, if you would, Christian. Emerging services software stack. The enabler here, a key enabler, is this green layer, this system of intelligence, SOI. This is something you've talked about a lot, the 4D map of the enterprise. But this is how we see the new software stack evolving. Take us through this, George.
Okay, so just really quickly, because we've been through this before, but it's not the conventional data platform. There's a role for the conventional data platform that we all know and love, the Databricks and the Snowflakes. Those capture snapshots of business transactions. They even can capture tables of business events coming out of the operational applications. But the system of intelligence shapes all that data to reflect the physics of how the business operates. It tells you not just what happened, but it tells you why things happen, what's likely to happen, and what should be done. It's a 4D map. It's a dynamic map of how the business works. And the reason we keep coming back to that is agents are like robots. They need that map to orient themselves, to perceive the state of the business, and then to take action, based on the decisions they make.
So software stack is going to completely change or evolve to that picture that we just showed. So the interesting thing that George has done here is, and if you bring up the next slide, Christian, we're now going to map that new stack, if you will. Shout out to Alex Williams, great name for his company. Map that into the Salesforce Agentforce 360 platform. Go, George.
Okay, so for those who can't see it but are listening, the point we want to make is, like, the system of agency is more than just an agent. So system of agency includes, let's say, Agentforce sales or Agentforce marketing and SDR. It's the agent within the application, but it's also the governance fabric for all the agents and the observability. So in other words, a system of agency is agents plus all the scaffolding around it. The system of intelligence, that's the green arrow, that goes to Data 360, because Data 360 is not just a database, it's a model of how the customer, of the customer profile and the engagement journey. It sits on top of a conventional data platform. And then just like MuleSoft, that's a governance layer for the systems of record, like when you want to operationalize decisions to your legacy applications. The point is, we'll touch on the fancy new agent development features they introduced, but the bigger part is the system of agency tied in to the system of intelligence. That's the observability and testing.
Okay, so now let's bring it back to that software stack. If you bring up, Christian, emerging service as software stack, system of agency, bring it back to this, George.
Okay, really quickly, I keep coming back to this. Like, there's so many agent tool startups, and all I want to say is, like, you can put them all in one bucket, and then you can say there are more agent development tools and startups than there are fleas on the average camel, because what differentiates the agents, they're all 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There's not that much different between them. What makes them really unique are the tools that they are natively trained to use, and here the tools mean the actions in the Customer 360 apps to operationalize a decision, and the data that's coming from Data Cloud that lets the agent perceive the state of the customer or the state of the business. That's what differentiates your individual agents. And then this was interesting, even though they emphasized some features for agent development tools, what was not in the keynote was the operations stuff, the observability, Datadog for agents, and we'll show some examples of that. But that's now merged into the system of intelligence. That's how you get the agents working at scale.
Okay, let's take a quick break here and bring in Paul Nashawaty and get his take on the angle for developers. Go ahead, Paul.
Dave, thanks for having me back here on this break-in analysis on Dreamforce. It's great to have been back at Dreamforce and understanding what's happening. This conference has always been the tone of what enterprises are innovative, they're heading. Every year we see this ecosystem evolve, but this year really does feel a little bit different. In 2025, Dreamforce made it clear that really they've entered this era of a new agency kind of approach, not just by AI, but really around an agency kind of approach. And when this is really coming from someone that's been spending years studying developer trends and enterprise monetization, I can really confidently say that we're seeing this emerging, what I call the agentic enterprise, where intelligent agents powered by data and automation are really becoming operations of business processes. And what this transformation really allows is a paradigm shift. And the information that we've been sharing on the Q research, the service as a software, it's really kind of driving towards that model, right? So the idea of software no longer being just a tool you build on, but you build, deploy, and manage. It is the service that the operator and decision maker makes. It acts, it learns, and it continuously adapts to the environment you're trying to build. So in Dreamforce 2025, we're seeing from all the announcements that this showcased evolution in full force. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of the impacts on the developer, right? We saw the agentic enterprise is redefining development. Salesforce is really showing how developers are working in this new world. Einstein, Data Cloud, and now Agentforce are converging into a unified code framework where data, code, and intelligence all operate together. We're seeing the agentic enterprises for developers is not just about writing logic, but it's orchestrating the behavior and how they design workflows where agents, not just humans, are making real-time decisions, interacting across systems and delivering outcomes autonomously. So that's something to think about. I often wonder about the human in the loop piece of that, but I think it's important as we evolve and change. This is something that's kind of growing and coming together. These changes in the developer's job, it's no longer about building applications, it's about architecting intelligent systems, adaptive systems of action, right? These are new ways of doing this. And we see this in the service as a software model. And we see that those systems are operating continuously, learning from data and optimizing themselves. This is a far cry from the static SaaS applications of the past. So we're not seeing that. This is moving far forward against that. So let's talk about some of the other announcements, right? When we look at Heroku, its evolving role in the open engine, it really is the agentic stack. So when we think about Heroku, there's a lot happening here, especially in the interest for developers, right? Heroku was once known as a developer-friendly PaaS, right? It's maturing into something much more strategic in my mind. So what we were seeing as the announcements at Dreamforce with Salesforce reinforced that Heroku now bridges that open development with enterprise-grade AI and governance. So there's a lot there. The developer, what that means is you can build microservices, you can host AI models, you can extend Agentforce workflows, all on this flexible platform, and still speaks the language that you want to work in. So it's really great to kind of use the common language that you're looking to use and still build out this environment. It's also a place where freedom to operate open development meets rigorous enterprise controls. So governance, compliance, and controls play into this motion as well. So this in the service as a software in action is really showing that the platform is not just hosting applications, but continuously runs service across integrated and infer and acts across systems as well. There's other pieces such as MuleSoft and the intelligent integration fabric. This is a piece that was announced at the event. It is really a major announcement in my mind in the MuleSoft acquisition and relationship. It shows deep integration with Heroku, but it also has a broader impact in the Salesforce platform. We're seeing MuleSoft evolve from just beyond the API management layer to intelligent integration fabric, right? This is where APIs, AI agents, as well as automation workflows operate seamlessly. So this is something that we're seeing across the industry, and we're seeing this across the environment, but definitely saw this at Salesforce with MuleSoft. MuleSoft's new capabilities include that anypoint flexible gateway. It's deployable on Heroku, meaning developers can now governance and authenticate and observe APIs from a single control plane, again, making it easier, removing the friction. They're powered agentic workflows across systems, makes it really easier and removes that friction. Again, that's something that we're seeing as adoption across the ecosystem. In a service as a software world, integration isn't a back-end task. It's really the nervous system that kind of keeps these intelligent systems responsive, compliant, and context aware. So that's something to think about here. Other developer impacts that we're seeing for the developers, the convergence that brings incredible opportunity and also new responsibilities. You're no longer just deploying code, but you're managing what we're seeing as living systems, so to speak. So let's break that down. Friction is failing. Low code integration and unifying governance means less glue code to focus on more of the business outcomes. So focus on that, less friction. Time to value is shrinking. AI and agent features really can be embedded and faster and also declarative. That's important to note here, right? So you want to have a specific part to work with. Let's talk about the ecosystem. Ecosystem lock-in is real. The convenience of deep integration must be balanced against flexibility. We see the innovation is expanding with new tools, agents, and skills, monitoring solutions, and emerging across the stack. Really is important to understand the innovation. We're seeing that in our own research with the Cube. We're also seeing this last point, which is skills are shifting. API design, event-driven architectures, AI prompting, and orchestration are now critical developer skills. Big change, big movement in that space. This does also align with the service as a software model, having the developer becoming more of the architect and experienced designers, not just coders. So that's important to note as well. They're responsible for ensuring performance, scalability, security, and often intelligence across the self-operating ecosystem. So something to consider here. There's definitely some risks and challenges, in my opinion, when looking at what we're seeing here. We see autonomy comes with complexity, okay? We also know that routing, governance, orchestration layers, and multiplying developers must stay really vigilant around the legacy and latency issues, as well as currency and observability. So we have to look at that. We see maintenance consistency across layers, from Heroku service to MuleSoft's APIs and Salesforce flows. That's all becoming essential, and we saw that in the show this year. We see that teams are getting ready to run large Heroku estates, migrating from new agent-enabled models that will require planning to maintain trust and reliability. And really the lesson here is simple. As a service, as a software era kind of matures, performance, security, and transparency are non-negotiable. This is an important skill. We saw that there was a lot happening around learning and scaling to empower the developer journey. This was a big part of Dreamforce 2025. It didn't just unveil these products, it also empowered the developers to learn and experiment, which is true to the nature of Dreamforce and Salesforce and the Trailblazer Forest sessions. They were hands-on labs, there's integrated workshops. There was a lot happening, and specifically around AI, low-code, and agentic frameworks. That is important. We're seeing in our own research, the Cube constantly shows that developers that have access to both low-code and pro-code environments innovate and accelerate faster. And Salesforce is leaning into that hybrid model and really is giving those businesses the tools to use fast while ensuring developers have the control and to scale securely. So very important. One of the things I'll leave you with here, though, is Dreamforce wasn't just about new features or platforms. It was really about redefining what it means to build software, right? So as we start moving from code-centric applications to service-centric systems, this is where AI and agents execute, learn, and optimize continuously. That is the foundation of agentic enterprises. That really is the service as a software model, right? So when we look at that, this is where the next decade of enterprises development is heading. In my opinion, we see this across the board. So for all developers here that we're attending, experiment. These are the things that I see that we really should focus on. You want to experiment with AI tools. You want to deploy on the low code, and you want to bridge low code and pro code solutions while engaging with your community. And most importantly, build with the impact that you need for your organizations. Because building in a service as a software era, developers are not just sharing or shaping applications, but they're shaping how enterprises think, learn, and act. There's a lot here, a lot to think about. Thanks for having me on this breaking analysis. This is really, really powerful stuff at the Dreamforce 2025. Thank you.
Okay, great. Now let's come back, George, and Christian, bring up the next slide, development, new features. Let's roll through quickly, George, the developer pieces that we can extract from Dreamforce 2025.
Okay, just really quickly, because these were highlighted in the keynote, people will want to hear. So Agentforce Builder is like further simplification for the low-code sort of business analyst or AI engineer, a low-code experience for building agents, including a conversational interface for building the agents. The next one was Agentforce Script, because agents are adaptive, so they're probabilistic. They don't always do exactly what you want, and so Agentforce Script lets you insert some determinism into the agent workflow, either at the task, process, or multi-agent level.
Got it. And that was my bad. I was on the wrong deck. Let's go now to the next one, which is Agentforce Vibes. We saw some great keynote demos there.
Yeah, this was, like everyone knows about vibe coding. It was a term coined by Andrej Karpathy, the great researcher, one of the founders of OpenAI. But vibe coding has so far been greenfield apps on new tools. So it's good for building new apps and fresh websites. But if you want to do vibe coding in the context now of Salesforce, like with its data, with its workflows, with its agent tools, you now have a capability to do that. So that was kind of exciting. They showed that was sexy.
And then the next one, system of agency, new features for developers. This is intelligent context.
Yeah, this one's just really quickly. It's important because RAG, everyone thought solves the hallucination issues, but there's issues with how do you chunk a document, how do you create the embeddings. This does it more intelligently by understanding what you're trying to answer, and so it solves the chunking problem by putting less burden on the admin or the developer.
And the next one, we saw a demo of this. I don't know if it was a real demo or not, but it's Agentforce Voice. If you bring that one up, Christian.
This was interesting, not just because it can be at the other end of a call center, but because you can interact with CRM as an employee, like a sales rep who doesn't want to spend an hour in the evening documenting their activities during the day can talk. So that's kind of useful.
And then the next one, Agentforce service, systems of record and agency, ready for pervasive agents.
So it was an example where, the flagship app, which is the customer service app, is now not just agent enabled, but it's got the command center behind it, which we're going to take a look at, which allows you to manage the fleet of agents.
Okay, so that's sort of a quick run through of the developer tooling, which is actually quite significant.
Yeah.
And critical for competitive reasons and also for customer value. Let's now go into some of those, what we call day two activities so Salesforce last year, a lot of POCs, a lot of people kicking the tires, a lot of vision, but this year they announced, let's bring up the next one, system of agency. One of the first new features we want to talk about for admins is observability, because you deploy these agents, you got to figure out what they're doing. Take it away, George.
So, it's one of the things that we've grown accustomed to with traditional data platforms is you're analyzing the state of your business, like business metrics. That's what business intelligence is all about. But now you want metrics about the health and performance of your agents. So this is a new type of analytics, but it's got to be converged and integrated with the Data 360 platform itself. And I put a picture also of agent orchestration in there, because when this gives you the capability to manage fleets or even armies of agents, but you're going to need a new type of analytics, because it's not just to track the business, you're tracking the agents and their performance, because that feeds the learning cycle. That's critical.
Okay. All right, so let's do a check. Where are we at here? We through observability, or do you have another one?
We have one more slide on observability.
Yeah, so let's go to that next one. Systems of agency, new features for admins, observability. That's part two.
Yeah, the key point here was you can look in aggregate across a whole bunch of sessions for a particular type of agent, or you can get down into the individual traces, human and agent reasoning traces for a particular session. The point is, you've got both aggregate and instance level.
All right, well, George, we did it. Okay, so let's just take a pause here. We've gone through some fire hose of sort of innovations and opinions and data that we have here. Let's bring back the ultimate slide here, how CXOs are going to accomplish their most strategic objectives. Bring that up. You got agents delivering outcomes across silos. So this vision is we've de-siloed the organization, we've harmonized the data, we've got now governance in place, we've got the data platforms participating, we've got the systems of engagement, we're inferring business context from those, we've got all kinds of competitors, and in that yellow we've got the sort of systems of agency taking action with probably an agent control layer. But this is what the new stack looks like. And you've listed a number of potential competitors in this space. Take us through this slide.
So yeah, let's go through the competitors. And this is back to the King Kong slide in the beginning. Right now it's Palantir and Celonis are the only two platforms that have business processes as first-class citizens. In other words, where you've got that 4D map.
But there are other aspirational players.
Yes, exactly, and that's why they're here. Blue Yonder is building on relational AI. We've talked about them a lot, and with their deep expertise in supply chain. ServiceNow is building out the workflow data fabric with the same objective, but it's just begun. SAP Business Data Cloud, they don't have the processes yet. They just have the entities like customers, orders, purchase orders, things like that. But they are moving in this direction. And Palantir is the one that's, so far been running away with it in terms of, the acceleration of their revenue and the customer adoption. But it's worth saying on Palantir that right now it's platform and tools, or as I like to say, from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, it's Spicoli is like, my dad's a TV repairman. He's got the ultimate set of tools. Palantir is the ultimate set of tools. It's not easy to build end-to-end applications on it, but it is powerful. And over time, the question is, can they build more repeatability into that?
So I gotta ask you don't have Oracle in here because you don't see them as part of the mix. Why?
I have not yet seen a credible entry in the data platform space where they're competing with Databricks or Snowflake. Like it took them, 15 years to, I don't even know if they've separated compute from storage yet. With the hardware, yes, they have full scalability when you buy their hardware because they engineered, the storage and the compute to work on a giant scale-up machine. But what the critical piece for them is, can they build like SAP or even more like Salesforce, something that starts to draw the application logic into the data platform? That I haven't seen.
So Salesforce, go back to 1999 when Salesforce launched. Its ascendancy, mid-ascendancy, it aspired to be the next great software company. It became the next great software company. Now it's got its 2030 vision, its framework, financial framework, targeting 60 billion. That's organic, without Informatica. Informatica, of course, opens up a whole new, realm of possibilities. You've been high on Salesforce because they've done the engineering work to do data cloud, even though 1.0 was kind of rudimentary. We saw the improvements today, or this week, bringing together some of the disparate, some of the misfit toys, frankly, that are starting to come together. What are and so you've been pretty high on Salesforce. What are the risks to that scenario?
The biggest risk is that their muscle memory is as an application company and their street cred is an application company, and they have to be a hybrid application and platform company. So they call high and they go in with a business value message, but they now have to reach the technology part of the organization, the customer organization, because those are the first ones tasked with building agent pilots. But it's not just building the pilots. Those are the ones who are going to build cross-functional outcomes. They need to be in both sides of the house. And by the way, the IT service offering that Madhu, friend of the Cube, is leading, it's strategic not just as a new product, but because it earns them cred in the IT side of the house.
The IT organization, whom they've never sold to before, really. Right. I mean, to a great extent. It's interesting, you saw Michael Dell on Tuesday, at the keynote. He's running a company that has to now sell to a new persona, right? The C-level executives, which they've never sold to before. They've always sold to IT, and you've got their partner, Salesforce, has never really sold to IT, so who knows, maybe there's some simpatico there. Well, George, any final thoughts?
I think this is going to be tech's greatest era in terms of the enterprise, because the last 20, 25 years, the big impact really was in consumer online tech. Those were the new giants that grew up that weren't possible before. Now we're going to turn every enterprise into something that looks and behaves and operates like consumer online tech. The winner take most end-to-end operability, a learning curve, experience curve. That's going to see impact that we haven't seen before.
So the message is get on the curve.
Yes.
All right, George, thank you. And thank you guys. Appreciate Christian helping us out, all the team here at Dreamforce. We'll see you next time on Breaking Analysis.